Hi, I'm trying something new. A lot of you know that I cook a lot. I don't do a lot of cooking on my YouTube channel, so I am going to get started with that. I want to stay home. I'm not going back to my outside the home job. It's a lot of time and effort and energy given to other people, and I need that time and energy and effort going to my family. So I'm going to try to boost my YouTube channel, and I am going to teach you all how I do a meal service called Dinner to Go. Every week I choose two meals and usually some extras, and people order from me, and I'll go into that ordering process in another video. So in case you want to do this so that you can stay home with your family, maybe you can catch on to it and it would be a good thing for you too. I'm not worried about anybody picking it up in my hometown. Um, if they want to, more power to them. It's a lot of planning, it's a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of skill, and um, it's not very much money. So it's just enough to boost us over where we need to go. It pays for my kids' camps, it pays for mission trips and things like that that we want to do throughout the year. The first thing I do when I want to get started is I clean off my big work surface. You'll see that I have my ingredients for today behind me. Some are still in the fridge. I don't have any dishes in the sink, that kind of thing, just so that I can work as I go, keep everything organized and clean and put away. I'm going to explain to you how I can move from cooking for 2 people to 4 people to 6 people, what kind of things that I use in the kitchen, all the pots, the pans, the gadgets that make it a little easier, and how I scale those recipes. The first recipe we're going to do today is keto cheeseburger pie. I think that's the name of it. I just found the recipe online. And then we're going to go on to some Tex-Mex taco bowls. Make sure when you start, put your hair up. My mother was an absolute fanatic about this growing up, even now, to the point of when we're cooking in the kitchen, making Thanksgiving dinner, whatever, have to have our hair up, we have to have it tied up in a bandana. Apparently the worst thing that can happen to someone is for them to get a hair in their food. I have one son and one daughter who completely come apart if a hair is anywhere in the kitchen, if it's anywhere near anything they're going to potentially put in their mouths. Of course, I don't like that either, but I just find it funny how some people come unglued when there is one of their family members' hairs somewhere. But I even take a roller and roll myself off. So, because you certainly don't want a hair in someone's food. So just bear with me. I haven't been in front of the camera a lot. This is one of the first times that I've been in front of the camera um, at length to do something like this. I am getting better at editing, but I'm not great. So hopefully this will all work out. The first thing I'm going to do is gather all of my ingredients that I need to get started for the first dish, and then we're going to get started. So stay tuned. I love to choose recipes from All Recipes. You don't have to go through someone's lengthy blog. You can adjust the quantities that you need, and they're really pretty simple and straightforward. So today's recipe for the keto cheeseburger casserole is coming off of All Recipes. I look through the recipe. I make sure that it is something that can just be put into the oven with minimal preparation. One girl has already asked me what's in it, and I neglected to put the dill pickle down in that, so I probably will not put the dill pickles in it. You can leave it out. You can modify it to fit whatever you're doing. I make casseroles mostly that are ready to go into the oven, and so I can see that this one is just assemble and then put straight into the oven, and so that fits what I want to do. At the same time that I am preparing one recipe, I'll be putting together components for another. Today, in addition to the keto cheeseburger casserole, I am making Tex-Mex taco bowls. I'm going to include some taco seasoned chicken, which I don't need a recipe for. I'm going to include some Mexican rice, which will have a little bit of tomatoes, onions, maybe even a little corn. I don't need a recipe for that. But I do want to include this cilantro lime slaw. So you saw me having to scroll through the entire blog. This one's not on all recipes. It's on one of my other favorite sites, Give Me Some Oven. And it will tell me what to do for the slaw. Some of these things I will substitute. I'll substitute mayonnaise for the Greek yogurt. I have some cilantro and lime juice, and I have the other components of the slaw. Rather than cut up a cabbage, I've bought some slaw mix, you know, like you buy at Walmart that's already ready to go. And so having these ingredients, or having these recipes pulled up on my computer and on the back counter will allow me to work on several components for both meals at the same time. Okay, so as you watch me, you will notice that I am not a chef. I'm a home cook. I've adapted recipes to work for me, and I've also adapted techniques to work for me. So you're going to see things here that aren't necessarily what you would see on Food Network, and you're just going to have to be okay with that, because I do well and I do what I need to for my family, and I do what works for me. If you don't have some big pots, I suggest you get you some. A yard sale is a great place to pick these up for cheap. My neighbor across the street called me up shortly after we moved in and asked me if I would like some canning jars. She had a bunch out in the shed. And of course I said yes, and out in the shed she had these two giant pots that she had gotten from a lunchroom, and they're great. They fit a lot of stuff in there. I just put 10 pounds of ground beef in there. I'm going to turn that on medium high, and then I'm going to put a little water in the bottom. I know that that is probably not the way to do it if you're a professional chef, but I do it that way because it allows me to walk away, to set that meat up, to get it all in kind of one layer in the bottom of the pan, to put a lid on it, and to walk away, which is what I need to do. If you're going to be efficient in the kitchen, especially cooking for a large number of people, you have to develop techniques that allow you to do more than one thing at a time. So now I'll just be able to walk away from that and do what else I need to do, which is chop onions. I have a beautiful knife that I bought in New York, but I made the mistake of putting it in the dishwasher. I don't know if you know this, but if you have expensive knives, you are not supposed to put them in the dishwasher. So my son asked in a knife shop what to do about it, and they sold him this knife sharpener. It's called Smith's. I don't know anything else about it, but I always sharpen my knives before I start because it makes everything so much easier. And I keep my onions in the refrigerator. I have another trick also. Leave the root end intact. That's where most of the juices of the onion are. People are always saying how they hate to slice onions because it makes them cry. Well, when the onion is in the refrigerator, it congeals the juices. And when you leave the root end on the onion, it keeps most of the juices in that end. You're not cutting into them, so they're not releasing whatever it is they release into the air to make you cry. And that works for me most of the time. I'm dicing these onions. Just a fine dice, and I'll check the recipe and see how many onions I need. After I get my orders for the week, I tally up the number of servings that I will need. That allows me to multiply the recipe online and know how much of each ingredient I need total. So when I multiplied this out, I think it was 28 servings total that I needed. So I was able to put that into the online multiplier at all recipes and come up with the number of onions that I needed. And so I'll just check that recipe and see what that number was and continue to get all these onions chopped and get them into the pot with the ground beef. I need a total of 5 onions today. Now you can buy frozen chopped onions or fresh onions that are chopped in your grocery store if you want to. And I do buy the frozen seasoning mix from time to time. But things have gotten so expensive, I'm having to do a little more labor to save some money in that area. So I do my chopping on my own most of the time. Plus, the fresh onion has so much more bite and flavor than the ones that have been frozen. I don't know why, but I do find that that's the case in almost everything I do. The fresh is better than the frozen. My onions were quite large, so I think I'm going to stop at 3. 5 medium onions or 3 large onions. That's about the same thing. Need to give my meat a little chop. Just break it up a little bit. Putting the water in there, the meat will kind of steam, and then when it's all finished, you can chop it up really easily. Just get it spread out. The last thing that this recipe calls for that's going in this pot is minced garlic. Now I take about a teaspoonful for each clove that I need. And it's important that you keep a watch on the amount of ingredients that you're using, or you will blow your profit margins very easily. So don't just reach in there and get a big old scoop of garlic. Those pennies that you're wasting add up in the long run. You're cooking for a lot of people. I could chop fresh garlic, but I just buy garlic already chopped. I buy it in water, not in the solution that they put it in, because I don't like the aftertaste that that gives. But I find that this works just fine. If you want to chop fresh garlic, go for it. I have a bucket handy, a stainless steel bucket to put all my scraps in. I give those to my pigs, and that keeps the counters nice and clean so that I'm ready for the next step. Well, those onions did get make me a little teary-eyed as those juices collected on the cutting board. While I've got my cutting board and my knife out, I'm just going to make the components for the Tex-Mex slaw. Now it calls for onion and garlic in here, but since I don't have any raw garlic and I've already used onion I'll be using onion in the rice, and so I don't want to just overpower people with onion. I'm just going to use some garlic powder and onion powder. I have my cilantro, and then easy peasy, we're going to put this slaw in here. It calls for some lime juice, cumin, salt and pepper. I'm going to do the garlic powder and the onion powder, and I've also started some chicken breast tenders in olive oil just to sear. I will put those on medium-high heat. Here's my other ingredients for the slaw. And when I modify a recipe like this, I write it down. I write down where I got the recipe, and I write down how I modified it, so the next time I want to use this, I have it all ready. So we're using this recipe on Gimme Some Oven for the cilantro lime slaw. Just so you know, I'm substituting mayo for the Greek yogurt. I probably won't put an entire cup. I'll just go and see how I can make it creamy. Everything else is correct, except for because I'm using onions in something else and a lot of people don't like raw onions, I used a half a teaspoon of onion powder. A lot of people don't like raw garlic. I used a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and I am not adding the jalapeno because a lot of people don't like things spicy. If you wanted to say jalapeno optional and have people add it if they wanted it, that's fine. I find that very time consuming and counterproductive to making a good profit and having a good use of your time. And that's how it looks. I use about a quarter cup of mayonnaise actually, because the lime juice and then the juices that will come out of the cabbage, it'll make a nice dressing. Now taste everything. When I taste this, it's a little sour, and so I'll add just a pinch of sugar in there, maybe half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon, just to take some of that sour bite out. But other than that, this is a good recipe. For the Tex-Mex rice that can also go on at the same time the meat and the chicken are cooking, I chopped half of a small onion into a dice, and I put that over in the pot that I'm going to cook the rice, and it is browning in a little bit of oil. And then I'm going to chop what amounts to about half a cup of tomatoes. Now, I had fresh tomatoes today. Sometimes I use canned tomatoes. You want to make sure to rinse those really well. Then dice those pretty small. I'm going to put those in the bottom of my pot with the oil. And then, once those are all softened and ready, I'm going to put my rice in with my water and let it all cook together. I'll probably season that with a little salt and pepper and some cumin. I just make this up as I go along. If you don't have tomatoes, put a little corn in your Tex-Mex rice. Put some peppers. Put, chop a bell pepper, chop a yellow bell pepper. Whatever you have that fits that Mexican profile or that Spanish profile, You can look up flavor profiles on Google and figure that out. But if you don't already know that, you're going to have to do a little bit of studying before you start a business like this. Put your rice in with your onions and your tomatoes and your oil. You can toast the rice a little bit. For 8 servings, this is 2 cups of minute rice, half a cup of diced onion, half a cup of diced tomato. I'm going to put some salt and pepper in there. The oil is already in there because of what I was sauteing the vegetables in. And then I'm going to cook it just like minute rice. You can use regular rice if you want to. I find that it gets sticky and it doesn't hold up for storing in the refrigerator a day before I give it to my customers. Coming down to the final stretch, I got the meat, onions, and garlic. I'm just going to chop that good with a spatula. It comes out just as if you had stood over it for 15 to 30 minutes, chopping it into a crumble in the skillet. Comes out just the same, and you didn't have to waste all that time standing over it. We're going to drain all the excess liquid and grease off of it, so adding the water really doesn't matter. And then as your chicken cooks down, just leave it in there for a few minutes to get some nice brown bits on it. You can even turn that on low and let it go for quite a while. Rice is cooking and everything is about to come together to put these meals together for keto cheeseburger casserole and Tex-Mex chicken bowls. Sounds great. I mixed together the mayonnaise, ketchup, and mustard mixture from the recipe that's online. And I'm just going to put that into the meat that I've drained. You can also rinse your meat if you would like to. I just try to drain all of the grease out of it. I don't rinse it. I don't like it dry and flavorless. And I live in the South, as you can probably tell from my accent, and we don't like anything dry or flavorless. You live out in California, you probably don't even eat beef. But you could easily wash this off if you're worried about all the flavor that the little bit of grease adds. We've got some nice color on our chicken. I've turned that off. The rice is resting and we are almost ready to assemble. Okay, so now we're ready to assemble. For a recipe like the cheeseburger casserole, I'm going to use the recommended daily allowance of meat and food for each casserole. This week, I have 2 orders for a small, which feeds 2 people. I have 3 orders for a half, which feeds 4 people. And I have 2 orders for a full, which feeds 6 people. So the recommended daily allowance for people for meat is 4 ounces. So I will put 4 ounces per serving into the casserole dish, and then I'll go ahead and cover it with the cheese. Now all of my customers know that my servings are based on the USDA food allowance. So that's what they're expecting. If they have 6 or 4 people in their family, but they know that they're going to eat extra, then they order the 6 casserole. They just work it out over time to get exactly what they need. Now I'm going to use a measuring cup for this, and I certainly recommend that you stick to your serving sizes. If you don't, you'll end up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now Now that was a 1/2 cup measure, and I have 6 servings of meat in there. I'll spread that out over the bottom. It's very hot. And if there's any clumps, of course, I'll break that up. And then the last thing that goes on top of this is cheese. Now, I was saying, stick to your serving sizes. If you don't, you will blow your profit margins. It's very easy, and my daughters do this all the time.